What were God's greatest hits? Hello to everyone, and welcome to another one of our vlogs or videos from St. Mark's. You can tell I'm here. Some of you can tell I'm here in the parish hall at St. Mark's, where tomorrow I'm videoing this on February 26th, and tomorrow, for the first time since March of 2020, we're going to have in-person adult Sunday school here, and I'm very pleased to and happy and honored to be part of that again. And I realize some of you are joining us on Facebook or YouTube and may not realize that, or some of the things that are going on at St. Mark's, but we're glad to get back and in person and do this. We will continue these videos, maybe in a different format, but that's where I am today. I titled this is What Were God's Greatest Hits? And the history of that is back when I was in college. I invented a little game. Back when I was in college over a half a century ago, it used to be that people had albums, wax with the long playing albums, the LPs. And there were a lot of musical groups, and when the LPs came out, they turned their 45s into LPs and had what they call a greatest hits album. So different groups would have this, and came up with this little game where they said, I'll call it What Were God's Greatest Hits, and it's a really good icebreaker and gets people to talk about that. It's a good way to get to know people, what their values are. And being in college, a lot of people came up with the ideas, obviously, of God's greatest hits were sex and music and alcohol. And some of the more studious or serious people came up that God's greatest hits were, humans, which would probably be God's greatest mistake too, we make that argument, or the creation, or the resurrection, or the other things that other people love, or language, or people's yearning to be better and improve themselves, happiness, sunrises, beaches. There are a lot of good things that come up here. So we start naming God's greatest hit, or the top 5, or the top 100, or whatever you want to say. It's an interesting little exercise to sort of reveal people's values and what they appreciate in life. So I bring this up because we are on the last video of Epiphany, the Epiphany season. The Epiphany season, obviously, as we've discussed, is where we celebrate God's revealing himself through Christ and the manifestation of Christ. And we study different Bible stories during this period about the visit of the Magi when Jesus the Messiah was first revealed to non-Jewish people, about the visit to the temple, the baptism of Jesus is always done, and the wedding at Cana when Jesus did the first miracles. And all these are very important, but I've always thought something was missing in Epiphany, and by studying those things that happened in the past about Jesus. And now, so I think I would fear that because we're somewhat missing the points. If you were to ask most Christians at the end of Epiphany, have you had an epiphany? Have you had a revelation, these last 6-7 weeks? And, is God more clear to you now than he was at the beginning of 6 or 7 weeks ago? Do you understand God better than you did, several weeks ago? And most people would answer no, or they give you kind of a blank look, because, I suggest that we're guilty of not only, having epiphanies or miracles happen in our Christian lives, but we don't even expect them to happen. Now, this lesson was inspired by an article I read in the New York Times this past week by a writer named Colleen Creamer, who lives in Nashville, Tennessee, and she wrote that back in 1994, she was in Los Angeles when there was an earthquake that caused a power outage all over Los Angeles and the surrounding communities. So everything was pitch black. This earthquake occurred about 4:30, and after an earthquake, a lot of people go outside because they feel that's safer. So all these people were outside in total darkness because there were no lights. And the people of LA were just astounded by this. They had never seen a dark sky before. And a lot of people seeing the Milky Way were really upset about it. And seriously, there were many, many calls to 9/11 or 911 and the Griffin Observatory in Los Angeles of people talking about strange, unidentified objects in the sky. And Miss Creamer said that she was awestruck by this experience. It really kind of changed her to looking into this. And this article mentioned that most Americans don't ever see a dark sky because we live around cities and man-made lights, and there's light pollution is a term for it. And she observed that this decreases our connection to the universe. And this article is about a trip she was taking to Utah to see one of the few places in America where you could see a completely dark sky. Another person I want to use as an example for what I'm trying to talk about is Albert Einstein. Now, Albert Einstein was not a Christian. In fact, he was Jewish, but his religious life is a little bit different than what most of us have, because he did not believe in a personal God. But he did have this sense of awe of the universe, and that he wrote in a book he wrote called Religion and Science in 1930. He wrote that to experience he seeks to experience the universe as a single significant whole, and he called this the cosmic religious experience. And Einstein in 1936, a sixth grade girl wrote him a letter asking, "Do scientists pray?" And he responded a very lengthy letter. He took it very seriously. He said told her the pursuit of science leads to a religious experience of a special sort. So Einstein really spent his life, searching for this, for the mysterious. In fact, he made a statement. He said, "The most beautiful experience we could have is the mysterious." Ironically, when Einstein's on his deathbed, his son reports that his last words were, "If only I'd had more mathematics." So he was always trying to expand and learn more, and I think we can learn from those examples. But I mention these examples because I fear that during this epiphany that we Christians are stopped looking for or expecting to be awestruck. Or looking for a manifestation for God. Ask most Christians, have they ever seen a miracle? And most of them will say no, sadly. And then you ask most Christians, do you expect to see a miracle? And sadly, most of them will say no. Well, I can say, yes, I have seen what I believe is a miracle in a visiting Eucharist experience, and I was surprised by that. I really wasn't looking for it, and I'm glad that I was in the right frame of mind to appreciate it. But really, I very strongly feel that we Christians, if we're in the right frame of mind, see miracles every time we do the Eucharist. It is a miracle that Jesus comes into the bread and wine. It is a miracle that receiving and being participants in the Eucharist changes us, or has the potential to change us. And those are miracles that we should be experiencing every week, but sometimes our mindsets are not there. So I'm going to ask this, it's into this Epiphany season, we need to ask ourselves, how is God revealing himself to us right now? How is God manifesting himself to us? And let's look at this before Epiphany ends and we begin Lent this week. And of course, there can be many answers to this, and I hope you consider these questions. But I do want to quote another writer named Derek Day, who I read, he posed the question, what did Jesus come to do? Why did Jesus come to earth? And what was he intended to do? And there have been a lot of answers to this, but what he suggests is that Jesus came to show us the Father, that Jesus came to show us God, that people had messed up their understanding of God from the very beginning and thought that he was more of a tyrant and someone who had vengeance and all this. And Jesus came to show us through his life what God is really like. He said, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. And the second thing that Jesus came to do is to, besides showing us God, is to show us ourselves, the true nature of ourselves, that we're not totally sinful, fallen creatures, but that that God dwells in us, and we are made in the image and likeness of God. So, on this video and the end of this Epiphany season, I'm going to suggest that these two Epiphanies, that Jesus came to show us what God is like, and Jesus came to show us what we are like, are two of God's greatest hits. So, because of these epiphanies and these greatest hits by God, we can say, thanks be to God. And also, because in a few days, Lent will start, we'll say for the last time in a while, thanks be to God, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.